You guys are back, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to Squared Up. As always, my name is Sean. Today I have a very, very special video for you today. Today we will be reviewing The Last of Us Part 2. We're going to consider it both as an individual game and as a sequel, just to give it a little bit more of a fair review. As you guys probably know by now, a lot of fans are not happy with The Last of Us Part 2. Personally, I loved it. Even as a sequel, I loved it. I see why people are mad though, but we're going to get into all of that during this video. Without any further ado, let's get into it. I can't wait. As always, I'm Sean, and this is Squared Up.
1, 2, 3, 4. Baby, when that's all I need, I play these games, they don't play me.
Before we get into The Last of Us Part 2, I'm going to give you guys a quick introduction to The Last of Us Part 1 in case you haven't played it. This game came out 7 years ago, so I'm not going to bother doing a spoiler alert for it. If you have not played the game, by now you know what the story is, so I'm not going to make any apologies for not giving you guys a spoiler alert for this one. However, when I start talking about The Last of Us Part 2, I will go through all the game mechanics and stuff, but once the spoilers come, you will have a warning. So if you haven't played this game, if you want to play this game, I won't, because I know as a gamer, the storyline matters. However, that being said, let's go into The Last of Us Part 1. In The Last of Us Part 1, we get introduced to Joel right before the zombie break happens, or the night of, I should say. We get introduced to Joel's daughter, Sarah, who unfortunately tragically dies within the first few minutes of this game. And I have to admit, the first 10 or 15 minutes of The Last of Us Part 1 brought tears to my eyes. It was so beautifully written. It was so emotional. It was so beautiful the way it got you into that game. It literally got a stranglehold of you, and it did not let go until you finished the game. Jump forward a few years. The zombie apocalypse is fully amongst us. The government has completely failed everyone in the United States, and I'm assuming in the world, but the focus is Washington and the US. So the story starts there, where Joel and his partner are making gun runs and trades with other rebellion groups because the government's not doing much. Now there is a group called the Fireflies, which at first Joel and Maria are completely against, but shortly after, they get introduced to a little girl named Ellie. Now, Ellie is a funny, spunky little girl. She's got a lot of personality, a lot of attitude. Personally, I loved her right away. It was an instant connection with me for Ellie. The jokes she makes, the amount of growth she's had throughout the first game, learning how to whistle, collecting comic books. So much fun watching her character grow throughout that game. Now, the interesting thing with Ellie is before she meets up with Joel, she has a bite mark on her arm from a zombie that's been a few weeks old, and for some reason Ellie has not turned into a zombie. So, The Last of Us Part 1, the story is that basically Joel and his partner have to get Ellie across the city to St. Mary's Hospital, where there are some doctors and scientists that will be performing some tests on Ellie to try to find a cure for this zombie infection. They finally make it to the hospital, and Ellie is put under, and she's having all these tests done on her. At this point, Joel finds out that if this cure is at all possible, it's going to have to kill the host, which is Ellie. So I don't know whether Joel doesn't understand this, or whether they've had such a huge connection throughout that game that Joel kind of sees her as another daughter and doesn't want to lose another daughter. He doesn't want to go through the pain of losing someone else that's roughly the same age as his daughter. So Joel, being the badass that he is, breaks into St. Mary's Hotel, kills off all the guards, all of the doctors, all the surgeons, and literally shoots the doctor in the head, picks up Ellie, and walks out the door. Ellie comes to, and she asks what happened, and Joel straight up lies. He says that there was no cure, they couldn't find anything, and you're free to go and live your life as you were. Enter Last of Us Part 2. Let's go through some of the new game mechanics that are featured in Last of Us Part 2. First thing I noticed right off the bat is dodging is very key in this game. So throughout the game, you'll have zombies attack you or people attack you, and you press the L1 button to dodge. In this one, if you don't dodge those zombie attacks, they will get you, and you cannot get them right away. They will attack you 2, 3, 4, 5 times, until they kill you, basically. So you have to make sure you dodge before you attack, which is very cool. Other new things in the game, you have a prone position where your character will lie down on the ground and crawl. The new prone position allows you to crawl underneath places like subways or cracks in the wall or fences or cars or whatever the case is. This adds for a lot of new mechanics when it comes to finding your way out of mazes and little areas in the game, to find little secrets and stuff like that. The prone position is key in this game. You can craft new items like tripwires and smoke bombs. In the first game, I believe all you had was a cluster bomb, which was just a can filled with some explosives and nuts and bolts and knives and sharp things, basically. In this one, they've kind of expanded that. Now you have tripwires where you can leave it, and if a zombie comes close to it, it'll explode. You also have the ability to build smoke bombs, which is really key when you're fighting other humans. So what that will do is it blows up into a cloud of smoke and reduces visibility for anyone that's trying to take aim at you. Upgrading your weapons has changed. I wouldn't say this is a drastic change, but it is a very cool change that I really liked. In the first game, when you upgrade your weapon, it's just kind of like a press X here, press X there. Ellie kind of does her thing and shows you the upgraded weapon. In this one, you can actually see what Ellie is doing to upgrade those weapons. For example, you can upgrade your scope from a 4x to a 6x, as an example. You can actually see Ellie unscrew the first scope that's on there, take it off, and put on a new one, shine it back up, and then take a look at her work. Another new feature, I guess you could say, in The Last of Us Part 2 are the new zombies. Now, in The Last of Us Part 1, we were introduced to runners, clickers, and near the end of the game, you got introduced to bloaters. So in The Last of Us Part 2, you still have your runners, clickers, and bloaters, but you also have crawlers, you also have shamblers, you also have whatever the hell this thing is. Now, the first time I ran into one of these monsters, I was terrified. It's literally like 5 or 6 zombies combined into one. So imagine you have a bloater from the first game. You've got about 3 clickers attached to it, and then a couple of random regular runners attached to that. Like, this thing is terrifying. Whatever this zombie is, it is not easy to kill. Obviously, when it has that many zombies in it, it's much more tough. I think the first time I played it, I ran out of ammo, so I tried to attack the thing with a machete, and as Ellie went to slice the thing, it hit the monster in between 2 of those heads, and the one head that was on this side literally split off and became a separate monster. So not only are you still facing the multi-monster here, now you've got a clicker chasing you as well. This thing was terrifying. Trust me, you guys gotta see this. Probably my favorite feature of The Last of Us Part 2 is that there is absolutely no load screens. You have your initial load screen when you first start the game, and after that, there is no load screens. What they've done instead of having load screens is a character in the game will say, for example, "Hey Ellie, follow me," or "Ellie, come this way." And they'll start walking in this direction. You lose the ability to run during this period, but the story goes on, right? So you can still explore your surrounding. You can still collect all your collectibles if there are any in that area. So you start following them. You can't run past them. You can't even run. So what you do is you follow that person. You'll have that conversation. You could look around and collect your collectibles until the scene is loaded. And you can kind of see that the person takes their time. At some points, even if you're right next to them, they'll kind of pause, turn, and look at you, and then continue to walk without saying much. So I'm assuming that's how they've gotten around actually having load screens on the screen. But the fact that there is no load screens and the game goes on while you are waiting and following these people adds a lot to the game. It doesn't take any momentum out of the game. So when you finish a boss and like you finish a boss battle and you go on to the next section and you have a little bit of a follow me section, you'll have an exchange between whoever you're playing around, and they'll say, oh man, like that was really tough. Oh, I can't wait to get out of here, whatever the case is. And they keep going, which I loved. That was a key feature and probably one of my favorite things. I wish more games added features like this. Before we get into the spoilers of The Last of Us Part 2, I'll tell you a little bit. We do get introduced to a new group called the WLFs, also known as the Wolves, also known as the Washington Liberation Front. We also get introduced to another group that we don't, even by the end of the game, we don't find out too much about, known as the Scars. And we also have the Fireflies, where Joel, Ellie, and that whole crew are now part of the Fireflies. I can't say much more without saying any spoilers. So without any further ado, here comes our spoiler alert. Before we get to the spoilers, folks, if you like this kind of content, don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and that notification bell to stay up to date with all of our future videos.